Explosions and a large fire have been reported at a military base near the village of Bolshaya Tura in Russia's Zabaikalsky Krai. According to Russian media and local sources, nearby residents witnessed the incident. Firefighting efforts are underway, with aviation support including a Mi-8 helicopter deployed to contain the blaze, which has produced heavy smoke visible from afar. Local authorities have only stated that a small fire occurred within a restricted area of the military facility, adding that the Russian Ministry of Defense representatives should address the situation. Russia's Ministry of Emergency Situations, EMERCOM, reported that unexploded ordnance detonated in a field as a result of the fire. A specialized military fire brigade is currently working at the scene. A total of 25 personnel and 8 units of equipment have been deployed to fight the blaze, including 9 EMERCOM staff and 3 specialized vehicles. Local residents also reported the arrival of a firefighting train. The head of the district where the settlement is located stated that the fire broke out in the same area where artillery ammunition depots exploded in April 2014. The fire and explosions resulted in the deaths of 10 people, including the warehouse manager and some of the staff. The cause of the fire was a crown forest fire that spread to the warehouse area. The blasts damaged several houses in nearby settlements and destroyed a school. It appears that the Russians did not restore the operations of this artillery ammunition depot after the fire. Reportedly, there was also a fire at the depot earlier this May. Back then, aviation and a firefighting train were involved in extinguishing the fire. No population evacuation was performed, but some locals left their homes on their own, fearing a repeat of the 2014 incident.
But today the military has cordoned off everything. Like that. No fire trucks are allowed in. There are explosions. Now Part 76 of the B-200 is taking off. And they will localize this fire from the air with water. Well, that's how it is.
A Russian schoolteacher mobilized despite ill health has described his time in a notorious Russian army unit. He was told to execute prisoners of war, saw Russian deserters being tortured, and was repeatedly beaten. After he deserted, his lawyer tried to turn him in. Ilya Alokin is now in Armenia, seeking political asylum in the West. He says he was opposed to the war when it began and had hoped that his physical ailments would keep him out of it. However, while on sick leave from his job as a primary school teacher, he was mobilized. Alokin was sent to the 9th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, Military Unit 71443, formerly part of the Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, armed forces. The unit is notorious for its mistreatment of its own members. Over 1,500 people have signed an online petition asking for an investigation into its commanders, including failure to provide medical care, extortion, stealing from the cards of the dead and missing, beating and imprisoning men, and sending the wounded and sick into assaults. Alokin's account corroborates many of these accusations. He was put to work in a clerical role, filling out documents and taking identification photographs of the dead. A gruesome task which he says completely broke my psyche. I became even more afraid. He was relentlessly pressured by his commanders with threats of being sent to the front line. One day a POW was brought to him. His eyes were covered with red tape, and his hands were covered, and his feet. The commander said, "You haven't killed anyone yet. You need to kill someone. Here's an automatic rifle for you." I said, "I'm not going to kill anyone." For which I got what I got, of course. They beat me up. And then they said, "If you tell your family or anyone else, we'll reset your account, execute him." I don't know what happened to this prisoner next. According to rumors, he was taken to Zero, the front line, and at Zero they usually reset your account. Deserters were imprisoned in a pit for a few days before being sent into assaults. None of them returned. If they didn't want to fight, they were immediately executed. Others were tortured. In my presence, they brought in 2 deserters. They began to interrogate them, called them traitors, beat them on the legs with a stick. Then they sat them on a chair, poured water on them. They connected iron wires to their fingers and turned on the current. I saw all this, I said. "You can't do that." They said, "If you try to tell someone, we will do the same to you." Alokin was also threatened, beaten, and assaulted with a stun gun. He was made to dress in women's clothes, in some kind of black mask, and they took pictures, which they threatened to publish if he disobeyed, to depict him as a BDSM participant. Soldiers were systematically robbed by their commanders. Convicts were immediately sent to the front line as they didn't have anything worth stealing. Contract soldiers and the mobilized were kept back for a week or two to be stripped of their money. First, the commanders will take money from them, and then they will go to the front. The commanders have all the data, all the PIN codes for the phones. They have a whole box of phones and bank cards. All of this is given to them before they are sent. Elikin faced a worsening kidney disease by the end of 2024. Although he was diagnosed with a kidney stone that needed an urgent operation, his commander refused to allow it and threatened, "We'll send you to the front lines, you'll come home in a black bag." Elikin decided to desert and contacted the activist group Go to the Forest for help. He devised an escape plan to fake a divorce and claimed that he needed to travel to Donetsk City to marry a local girl who had been recommended to him by his comrades. His commanders accepted this story. As Elikin says, they marry some of their men to local girls they know, and then they send this soldier to the front. He dies, and they divide the death compensation payments between themselves. When he got to Donetsk, he took a taxi to Rostov in Russia and bluffed his way through checkpoints using a falsified leave sheet. At the last checkpoint, they checked me, a red light came on, and they told me, "You need to go to the black room." I go in, there are people with rifles and truncheons, and on the right side they have a pit. I immediately realized what it was. There were 5 or 6 people sitting in it. They were apparently trying to escape. They sat me down at a table and began to interrogate me. The checkpoint personnel accepted Elikin's story and documents and allowed him to travel on to Rostov. From there he went to Perm via Moscow and on to his hometown. He was able to get an operation for his kidney stone and to hire a lawyer to help him. However, the lawyer told him that he had to go back to the unit. But don't worry, nothing will happen to you. We'll give you a certificate that you were on the medical operation. I say, do you understand what you're saying? If I go there now, they'll first make fun of me and then send me on an assault. Or maybe they'll reset my account right away. It turns out that she'd already talked to my commander and told him where I was. Apparently she was paid for it, realizing he had to leave immediately. Elikin fled to Armenia via Belarus, Azerbaijan, and Tunisia. He is one of a few hundred Russian deserters who have taken refuge there. Like many of the others, he is currently seeking political asylum in the EU. President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. While President Zelensky has already agreed to an unconditional ceasefire, Russia not only doesn't agree, but even is increasing the intensity of its aggression against Ukraine.
While President Zelensky have already agreed on unconditional ceasefire, Russia not only doesn't agree, but even are increasing the intensity of their aggression to Ukraine. From our part, we will continue to give full support to Ukraine and to continue to put pressure on Russia through sanctions. And the 18th package of sanctions is underway. Finally, we are looking forward for our common future as Ukraine entire member of the European Union.
Lavrov. And Europe, which is once again in history literally sparking off another major war, has little to offer given its marginalization in world affairs. And the European Union can now hardly be considered one of the significant poles of an objectively emerging multipolar world.
This dialogue is developing not quickly, of course, but it is quite possible with persistence and with each side taking responsibility for the fate of the world can very well benefit all of humanity, including for preventive discussions and crisis prevention, similar to the ones we are currently observing. But Europe once again, which once again in history is literally stirring up another big war, can hardly offer anything under its marginalization in world affairs. We are also observing this, and the European Union can hardly be considered as one of the significant poles in the objectively forming multipolar world.
The United Kingdom will provide Ukraine with 350 ASRAAM missiles to boost its air defense capabilities, funded through interest accrued from frozen Russian assets. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced this as reported by The Guardian. Valued at £70 million, these air-to-air missiles have been swiftly adapted for ground launch. With the conversion process completed in just 3 months, a remarkable achievement. The British-made ASRAAM missiles will be deployed using the Raven mobile air defense systems already supplied by the UK to Ukraine. According to reports, an additional 5 of these systems are currently en route to Ukraine. Once delivered, the total number of Raven air defense units in service with the Ukrainian armed forces will rise to 13, significantly enhancing their defensive capabilities. Speaking at the NATO summit in The Hague, Starmer said that Russia, not Ukraine, should pay the price for Putin's barbaric and unlawful war. We have the right to use confiscated Russian assets to strengthen Ukraine's air defense. Ukraine's security is vital to us, the British Prime Minister stated. Defense Secretary John Healey emphasized that these missiles will save lives and demonstrate that the UK's military and industrial base can adapt to the demands of modern warfare. The delivery of ASRAAM missiles is part of the UK's largest annual aid package to Ukraine, totaling £4.5 billion. The Raven air defense systems were first delivered to Ukraine in spring 2023, and by May 2025, they had launched over 400 missiles at enemy air targets, achieving an overall effectiveness rate of 70%. The system was developed in just 4 months based on an idea from the Royal Air Force's Air and Space Forces Center, which proposed using the available Supercat HMT 600 platform to mount the ASRAAM short-range air-to-air missiles. The British Royal Air Force worked closely with MBDA UK, the developer and manufacturer of the ASRAAM missile, as well as with Supercat, the manufacturer and designer of this vehicle.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comments section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.